Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And we're discussing chapter 15 this week, Galeton.
Woo.
I know. We have a epigraph in the front of this chapter talking about the piebalds once again. This is an excerpt from Delvin's The Politics of the Piebald Cabal. And it is talking about the persecution of the witted folk. And particularly that it starts off that kind of like a history. It says, since the time of the piebald prince, the scouring of the witted has been accepted within the Six Duchies as matter-of-factly as enforced labor for bad debt or flogging for thieves. It was the normal way of the world and unquestioned. In the years following the Red Ship War, it was natural that the purging should begin in earnest. Basically saying that the cleansing of Buck had freed them of one bad actor, and now the rest of the folk were, it doesn't quite say bloodthirsty, but we've kind of gotten that sense that Regal reawakened, the kings just like the circle and gladiators and things, and kind of reawakened that bloodlust. So Delvin in this excerpt basically says, then the folk of the Six Duchies, once the Out-Islanders were out of the way, turned inward and kind of began again the persecution in earnest. For a time, accusations of being witted were enough to make any man, guilty or not, tremble for fear of his life. The self-styled piebalds took advantage of this climate of suspicion and violence. While not revealing themselves, they publicly exposed well-known figures who were possessed of the wit, but never spoke out against the persecution of their more vulnerable fellows. It was the first attempt by the witted as a group to wield any sort of political power. Yet it was not the effort of a people to defend themselves against unjust persecution, but the underhanded tactic of a duplicitous faction determined to seize power for themselves by any available means. They had no more loyalty to themselves than a pack of dogs.
Right. I think this excerpt is really interesting because it feels to me like it is written by someone who is not witted and does not really care for witted people.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't seem like they're as hostile as most people, but it doesn't really have a favorable reading of witted people in general. It seems like they're reticent to admit that, maybe people were too hard on the witted after the Red Ship Wars. Like, there were innocents that were attacked, but feels more upset about the innocents who were attacked than about witted people having to deal with an uptick of violence. And then again, with this really negative view of the piebalds saying, they're not loyal to anything. They're like a pack of dogs. I think it's just a really interesting read. And especially because we know, or we can assume that this person doesn't have a personal connection to any of it.
Right.
And it kind of gives us a really good look at sort of how maybe the average person in the kingdom would look at the whole problem, I guess.
Yeah. It reads definitely like a historian doing like a treatise or an essay on this period of time or on the piebalds in particular. However, like you said, a couple of the word choices just kind of give it an underlying like, meh.
Right. And I mean, Robin Hobb has made the point through Fitz to talk about how a lot of time there is bias in writing that comes out, and especially when you're trying to write about history that you have some stake in some way.
Right.
So it's very possible that that's what is being done here. Maybe not. Maybe it's supposed to be, just a unbiased view. But I definitely read it as like, oh, this person hates witted people, or maybe doesn't hate, but is not fond of witted people at best.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting. Oh, interesting way to start this, especially because once again, we're going into a chapter where it doesn't feel like that has anything to do with what we're reading.
Right.
And that's because first-time readers wouldn't know that Fitz is about to go to the home of the piebald resistance party, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, because they've, as you guys probably recall, they have taken over Galekeep.
Yes.
And are kind of occupying Galeton and holding Lady Brisinga and Civil and their family hostage, basically.
Right. So I don't know. I think it's really fun, especially to get the the hints in the read through, or to know, sort of the background whenever you're doing a reread, to get refreshed of like, oh yeah, this is coming up. This is important.
Right. Yeah.
But we do start exactly where we left off, which isn't the usual case in many of the chapters for Robin Hobb. But this is Fitz talking about getting to the ferry landing first, which at the end of last book, he was racing and had not quite gotten there yet, but he was in the lead. So this is picking right back up, saying he got there first. And in fairness, the other two were close behind him, but it doesn't really matter because the ferryman is not going to take them until he gets the shipment of sea salt for Lady Brisinga.
So yeah, they race to the ferry. Tom Badgerlock wins, and Laurel's like, "Wow, I'm surprised he let you win and is in good graces with you."
Yes, well, she doesn't have the chance until Lord Golden sort of excuses himself from the other two. He does try to bribe the ferryman with more money, saying, please take us now. And the ferryman says, look, your coin can be spent once. Lady Brisinga pays me every week, and I'm not going to
Right.
stop doing business with her or jeopardize my livelihood. So
They have to wait a while.
They do have to wait. And Lord Golden decides to go to the inn nearby to have a drink and food, and leaves Fitz and Lady Laurel, I guess she's not a lady, but leaves hunting woman Laurel to sort of
look after the horses, and they get a chance to talk as well.
Hang out.
Yeah, so she kind of starts that by asking like, well, Lord Golden seems like he's kind of nice. Some lords would have taken it amiss that you would have that a servant would have won over them. And Fitz is very diplomatic in his response, but a little bit taken aback because I feel like he never really got this side of politics or social standings before in Buckkeep. He was always on the noble side, so he's like, that can happen? Wow. But he has a diplomatic response and basically says, the win was his anyways. Lord Golden picked out my horse.
Right. He really can't imagine a bad master, which makes sense because he isn't and never has been truly a serving person. So, of course, he's never had to deal with someone treating him rudely. But it is really interesting to get these sort of insights into how privileged Fitz was growing up. I think it's something that is really easy to overlook because obviously we're reading from Fitz's point of view, and we know that Fitz hated his life and didn't want to be there. And there's a lot of things that happen to Fitz that aren't fair and aren't nice. And it's really easy to overlook sort of the glamour of being the bastard prince. Well, I guess he's not a prince, but
right.
The bastard son of a prince, that there were good parts to it and things that he took for granted that are not as easy to see. But it's interesting to have grown-up Fitz come face to face exactly with what he missed out on because of, everything, all of the things that his birthright let him be part of.
Yeah.
There's also a really interesting part right before Laurel says, I can't believe he let you win, where Fitz is sort of moping because Lord Golden has gone in without him. And if Laurel wasn't there, they definitely would have found a way for him to go in with Lord Golden, and they could have hung out as friends. And it's just sort of the role they're playing, and he doesn't really take it to heart.
The servant role is kind of wearing on him right now, yeah.
Yeah. But he definitely is sort of pouting, and Laurel notices and asks what's wrong, and he says he misses an old friend, which is true, and it's the truth. But I thought that was really interesting that then it leads into talk about Lord Golden, because Laurel's kind of acting weird here. And I know before we were talking about how there might already be rumors about Lord Golden and his serving man's relationship.
Or just Lord Golden in general.
And so I just thought this was a potential thing where she's fishing to see what sort of relationship they have.
Yeah.
And especially bringing up like, oh, well, it's nice of him to let you in.
True. Yeah. See kind of how deep that runs. And so, as I mentioned before, Fitz kind of deflects it over to the horse, and Laurel says, "Oh, well, it seems like a good horse to me. What made you doubt her?" And Fitz is like, "Oh, I can't really admit that I'm witted, so it just, oh, the horse doesn't seem as willing as yours."
Which I feel like is fine. And also, he was told by the guy who put the shoe,
The smithy?
the smithy, the shoes on the horse, that she bit and wasn't super
Right.
nice of a horse, which he absolutely could have just said, I was warned by the smithy that she had an attitude.
Right.
Like, that's not weird, but he makes it this whole like, oh no, the only way I could know is because I'm witted. I have to think of an excuse. But he does a pretty good job. He does say, like you said, she's not as willing as like your horse Laurel, so I was worried, but she seems fine.
My black seems to lack the willingness, but as we get to know one another, perhaps it will come. My black? That's her name? I shrugged and smiled. I suppose. I hadn't given her one, but yes, I suppose that's what I've been calling her. She gave me a sideways glance. Well, it's a little better than Blackie or Queenie. I grinned at her disapproval. I know what you mean. Well, she may yet show me a name that fits her more truly, but for now, she's my black. And they settle down into companionable silence until Laurel eventually says, I wish those wagons would come. I don't even see them. So it's kind of small talk right now. And eventually she kind of shifts over to, I'd like to be on our way. I'd hoped to reach Galeton before full dark. I'd like to get up in the hills as soon as possible and take a look around. For the Queen's quarry, I supplied. Yes. She glanced aside from me for a time. Then, as if making sure I understood that she did not break a confidence, she said bluntly, Queen Kettrican told me that both you and Lord Golden are to be trusted, that I need to hold nothing back from either of you. I bowed my head to that. The Queen's confidence honors me. Why? Why? Well, such confidence from such a great lady to one like me is unbelievable, especially when you arrived in Buckkeep Castle but a few days ago. Her eyes met mine squarely. Kettrican had chosen her confidant well, yet her very intelligence could be a threat to me. I licked my lips, debating my answer. A small piece of truth, I decided. Truth was the easiest to keep straight in later conversations. I have known Queen Kettrican of old. I served her in several confidential ways during the time of the Red Ship War. Then it was for her that you came to Buckkeep rather than Lord Golden. I think it is fair to say I came for myself. And again, they subside into silence for a bit.
Right.
So there's like some play back and forth between Laurel and Fitz, Tom Badgerlock, to kind of determine how much the other knows here. And also a lot of confusion on Laurel's part of like, why you?
Right. And
Like,
it makes sense.
Who did the Queen send me with, you know?
Right. Like, this guy just got here. Why would the Queen trust him so much? And not only that, but also trust Lord Golden, because Lord Golden is this foppish, arrogant sort of
Right.
of nobleman. Why would the Queen, who is so austere, pick him as somebody she can confide in and trust?
Both people who have arrived at the court not long ago.
Right.
Maybe a couple months for Lord Golden.
And so I think it was really tactful of Fitz to only speak on his own story.
Yeah.
And sort of make it about like, well, I know her from a long time ago. And I think that's really acceptable. I mean, it's true and believable. And it just sort of is interesting to me because I think this follows the pattern for the rest of the time that Fitz is sort of dealing with Laurel, that he didn't really plan anything in advance of what he was going to say. Like, he knows the story of Tom Badgerlock. They've
Right.
set that straight, but he didn't really think much beyond that little story. And so here, when somebody rightfully is asking questions, he doesn't know what he's allowed to say and what he's not, and what his answer should be ahead of time. And so instead of just having something prepared in his mind, he's sort of trying to play it cool and not give anything away, which ends up just sort of making him look a little bit more suspicious. And I honestly feel like Laurel gets frustrated by it, because he keeps giving non-answers. And I understand from his point of view, he doesn't want to give away too much, but why would she give away anything when you're giving away nothing? And it's just sort
Right.
of there's no give and take to this. It's sort of Fitz being like, oh no, I didn't think it that far ahead. Let me think of something close enough to the truth that won't get me in trouble, but also, like it just feels like a little bit of a panic conversation from
Interesting.
Fitz's end in my read.
I think he does pretty well. He's pretty agile in the conversation and kind of plays it pretty well in my read of it, actually. That, like, it's understandable because he told her before that he came to Buckkeep to provide for his adopted son, right?
Right.
And that was his thing before. Like, I came for myself. I needed money, when she was kind of digging into his relationship with Lord Golden. And now this time when she's like, oh, so you came for the queen? He's like, no. I came for myself still. So he's kind of sticking to that. It doesn't quite make sense probably in her mind. She doesn't have all the details
Right.
of why that's still, but maybe she can fill in like, oh, he was pulled out of retirement as like a spy during the war to get brought back because he does need money. He doesn't know how much to share, that sort of thing. So I thought like it fills in enough of the details where there's still a lot of blanks where she can fill in the extra stuff and he doesn't have to go into the details himself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not trying to say that he's doing a poor job. I'm just saying he should have been more prepared for this sort of conversation
Maybe.
from anyone.
Yeah.
Like, let alone the person you're told to work with for this very specific mission.
Yeah, I guess like the ride over through the towns, he could have been thinking of something, but
Right.
he did just find out this morning, I guess, that he would be leaving.
No, yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. It just feels, I guess what I'm trying to say is we've had that conversation before where I feel like Fitz is really rusty and he isn't really good at his role as an assassin anymore. And so that's harsh. That's not what I mean, but simplified, I feel like he's gotten rusty. And I think this is another pinpoint of old Fitz would maybe have looked into the situation more, prepared a little bit better, but maybe Fitz just isn't a
Maybe.
preparer.
I think that's Chade who would like give him,
All the stuff ahead of
Yeah.
time. Yeah. Well, either way, he hasn't. And they continue on their conversation after a time of silence. There's a lot of silences in between, sort of just Laurel parsing through what has been given to her and sort of trying to decide where to go,
and
how much trust to give.
they're just waiting for Lord Golden as well. So, there's natural lulls in conversations, but Laurel, as you said, trying to figure out where to go just ends up being blunt. Do you think the prince ran away? She did not look away from me. I glanced about to be sure no one could hear us, and then he replies as bluntly, basically saying, I don't know, but I suspect he may have been lured. I do think others were involved in his leaving, but he wasn't taken by force. So Fitz is also trying to be blunt back, but also not reveal his information, because how else would he explain that other than he was witted? So this is, I think, where I read more of that frantic, like thinking on your feet that you were explaining earlier. In this response here, he's just like, oh, you're so blunt. Like, why are we bringing this up right now?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Earlier I meant the whole conversation feels like just one blunder after another. It's not necessarily that first answer that's like the worst, like panicking.
Yeah.
But that's the start of the avalanche of, oh, I didn't think about this ahead of time. And now, boom, what do you think of the prince? What happened to the prince? Uh-oh, I didn't think of how much to tell. Uh-oh, there's too many details coming out. Oh no, I gotta be more quiet. Oh no, now I'm being too quiet. It's just like not misstep truly, but like, slight misstep after slight misstep that's, instead of being calm about, he's sort of increasingly panicked about, I guess.
I don't think any way he was raised him for this, He is used to, if he's talking bluntly about something like that, it's with Chade and Kettricken, maybe Burek, but they're usually behind secret doors in the keep, not out in the open. So I think somebody else who he doesn't know about blatantly asking him in public is like, huh?
Yeah,
You're not supposed to be talking about this. That's not how I was raised. Be secret.
Right. And you can see how Laurel would think, we're in an open field, nobody's around, it's fine to talk, because she's not a trained assassin.
Yeah.
She's just the confidant for the queen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's a really interesting interaction between the two.
So basically, the kind of result of this conversation is Fitz saying, "I think we might be imposed in bringing him back." But Laurel saying, "I speculate that those who took him did not approve of the Queen's plan for marrying him to an out islander Narcheska. Nor do I." She glances away. So this is a kind of her submitting her own opinion. It's not just a grilling of Fitz. It's Laurel kind of being conflicted, I think, about this whole this whole event that happened.
Right.
Because she brings up her own ideas and opinions on what has been happening in court here as just Ketcherkin's confidant and huntswoman.
Mm-hmm.
And those words give Fitz pause because it's like, oh, that's not the Queen's will. And it's a little bit, not treasonous, but it's like anti what the royal court is doing.
I think for Fitz especially, any sort of dissent in opinion feels like a lot bigger than it could be because of the way he was raised and the times he was raised in,
Right.
where everything was really super serious, and anyone saying anything against what a king said was like, we're in the middle of a war, you can't just go against the king. And so then to have somebody who's supposed to be a confidant to the queen tell a stranger, I don't agree with the queen's opinion, it's really ringing alarm bells for him and sort of making him feel like, okay, how much does she disagree with the queen? Is she part of this whole operation to get rid of Dutiful? How deep does this go? Is this just a discontent in this one thing, or is it for the queen in general? And so I think while it feels like a normal thing for Laurel to tell somebody else who isn't a royal, just a casual, like, I don't approve of this thing, for Fitz, because of his background, it's feeling more like, okay, is she trying to get me in on a conspiracy to go against the queen? Like, what's happening? This is very serious.
Yeah, so he is trying to dig and see how far that kind of questioning part of her goes, inviting her to talk more, saying, I'm not sure I agree with it myself. And Laurel, being Laurel, is just continuing on very forthrightly, very bluntly. I have no confidence that the Out Islands are our best allies, let alone that they will remain true. How can they? They are little more than city-states scattered along the coast of a forbidding land. No one lord holds true power there, and they squabble constantly. Any alliance we make there is as like to draw us into one of their petty wars as to benefit us in trade. I was taken aback. She had obviously given this a great deal of thought, and in a depth that I would not have expected of a huntswoman. What would you favor, then? Were the decision mine, and well I know it is not, I would hold him back, in reserve as it were, until I saw surely what was happening, not just in the Out Islands, but to the south as well, in Chelsid and Bingtown and the lands beyond. There has been talk of war down there and other wild tales. Dragons have been seen, they do say. Not that I believe all I hear, but dragons did come to the Six Duchies during the Red Ship War. I've heard those tales too often to set them aside. Perhaps they are attracted to war and the prey it offers them. To enlighten her in that regard would have required hours. I merely asked, then you would marry our prince off to a Chalcidian noblewoman, or a Bingtown trader's daughter. Perhaps it would be best for him to marry within the Six Duchies. There are some who mutter that the queen is foreign-born and that a second generation of a foreign queen might not be good. And you agree? And Laurel looks at him and is like, are you forgetting that I'm the queen's huntswoman? She's great.
Yeah, better a foreigner like her than some of the pharaoh noblewomen that I've had to serve in the past.
Mm-hmm. So Laurel kind of opens up as a character here, and it's clear that she does think very politically. And thinking about the future and how she mothers one of Chade's kids, it's very apparent how they could get along, you know?
Right. She
is very intelligent.
Yeah, and she's definitely forward thinking and isn't just thinking about this step. She's thinking 4 steps ahead as well. And I think it's really interesting to see that from somebody who feels so open and honest, as opposed to from Chade, who is so secretive and always keeping things hidden. It
Or
does.
Fitz, who doesn't think about it unless prompted, and then he can think deeply. Like, this is
Yeah,
kind of her own opinion being formulated about things that are happening around her.
exactly. And I don't know. So I think it's really interesting. It does a little bit, I think, for me as a reader, make me a little suspicious of her because why is she being so forthright? But I think that's also my paranoia from Fitz seeping in, from being in his point of view, where I'm like, ooh, is she a good guy or does she know too much? Why is she thinking so much about this? But she is, it seems very loyal to Kettricken. And
Right.
clearly, if Kettricken says Fitz is okay, she can trust Fitz.
Yeah.
And I guess Tom to her. But yeah, she does have some really good points that it is kind of weird to wed him off at 14 or at least promise him off at 14, 15, however old he is right now, when it isn't a sure alliance and that doesn't necessarily promise that the future will be better. Like
Right.
it would be better to wait until he's older to see how the world is developing. But she also doesn't necessarily know about the behind the scenes of the
Yeah.
slipping grasp of Farseer Rain.
Yeah, she doesn't have all of the details
Exactly.
either, so. She offers him some food, saying that she always carries some with her. Some of the folk I've hunted for think no more of the comfort of their hunters than they do their horses or dogs. And Fitz is refraining himself, saying, okay, Lord Golden can handle and present himself as he wants to. I'm not going to try to defend him here. My Black lifted her head suddenly. Share, I offered her. She flicked her ears at me disdainfully and went back to grazing. A few days without me, and he's consorting with horses. I might have known. The wolf used the wit without subtlety, startling me and spooking all three horses. Nighteyes! I exclaimed in surprise. I looked around for him. Beg pardon? My dog. He's followed me from home. Laurel looked at me as if I were mad. Your dog? Where? Luckily for me, the great wolf had come into view, slipping out of the shelter of the trees. He was panting and he's headed straight for the river to drink. Laurel stared. That's a wolf. He does look a great deal like a wolf, I conceded. I clapped my hands and whistled. Here, Nighteyes. Here, boy. I'm drinking, you idiot. I'm thirsty, as you might be if you had trotted all the way here instead of riding a horse. No, Laura replied evenly, that is not a dog that looks like a wolf. That is a wolf. I adopted him when he was very small. Nighteyes was still lapping. He's been a very good companion to me. Lady Brisinga may not welcome a wolf into her home. Nighteyes lifted his eyes suddenly, looking about, and then without a glance at me, slunk back into the woods. Tonight, he promised me in parting. I'll be on the other side of the river by tonight. So will I. Trust me. Tonight. So Fitz is sitting there like, oh, I must be mistaken. Yep, that was a wolf.
You're right. Oh, that's totally a wolf. Weird.
He
Like,
sends after Nighteyes, you've made me look like an idiot. And Nighteyes says, that wasn't hard.
yep. Well, it's sort of a predicament he got himself into.
Nighteyes kind of scares him into it.
I
a little
mean,
bit.
yeah, but I don't blame Nighteyes. Nighteyes is innocent.
Nice little prank.
But it's really interesting because again, Fitz is panicking and not really thinking and really only half paying attention to Laurel anyway while trying to get Nighteyes to come closer by talking with him with the wit and out loud being like, "Ooh, come here, boy." And so he doesn't realize the hole he's digging himself into by being like, "Oh yeah, that's my dog for sure." And Laurel's like, "That's a wolf." And Fitz is not supposed to be someone who doesn't know about animals. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's phrase. I phrased it.
She doesn't know his background or anything like that.
That's true. But it just feels like, I don't know. How would you not know that's a wolf? And he's just like, no, it's my dog. That's for sure my dog.
And Laurel also speaks up because Nighteyes is not innocent here.
Right.
And says, that was a very peculiar way for a wolf to behave. She was still staring after him. It's been years since I've seen a wolf in these parts. And that would be weird because these are the areas that her mother's family grew up in, that she was
Right.
around. These are like old blood areas. So she's like, was that someone's companion spying on us?
That's true.
That's what I think she's kind of thinking right now.
Okay. You know what? Fair. I forget that she has the wit connection, so she knows about the community. And I do wonder if Fitz being so adamant, like, no, it's my dog. It's fine. It's my dog. If that makes her
Like
suspicious in any way, to be like,
It might.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely because, at first she's like, that's definitely a wolf. And when he won't let it go, she just mentions, I don't think the Lady Brazinga is going to let you bring a wolf into her house.
Right.
So it's not, she stops like pushing the point of whether or not it's a dog. It's more about
And
like,
Fitz kind of concedes it too. Says like, oh, I adopted him young. He's
yeah,
fine.
yeah. But I think it's really interesting of how easily she sort of lets it go and doesn't bring it up again.
Right.
Interesting.
Fitz is kind of saved by Lord Golden exiting out of the tavern. He is approaching them, calling Badgerlock, huntswoman. In great relief, Fitz leads the horses over to him, and Laurel trailed them. As we approached him across the meadow, she made a small sound of approval in her throat. I glanced back at her in consternation. Her eyes were fixed on Lord Golden, but at my questioning glance, she quirked a small smile at me. I looked back at him. Aware of our scrutiny, he all but struck a pose. I knew the fool too well to be fooled by Lord Golden's careless artifice. He knew how the wind off the river toyed with his golden locks. He had chosen his colors well. So it's kind of a description of him and how he looks glorious, but Fitz knows like he's doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
It's not just like
He's
I'm just so casual right now in the wilderness.
It's like knowing or going to a stage production where you've worked backstage and so you know all the points that the actors are going to hit, and then watching the actors do it on stage in the costumes. Like you can tell it's a act and that's the move they've been practicing all week and all months long.
Right.
But the people coming to see it live for the first time aren't like, oh, they practiced that exact hand wave down to the millimeter, whatever. So I think it's really funny for Fitz here to be like, ugh, what a show off. And Fool is like, who, me? I'm just beautiful naturally.
And Laurel's like, ooh.
Laurel's like, he's really cute. But yeah, I don't know. I love this. But I think this starts another thread that's in this chapter for me, which is Fitz's real struggle with differentiating the Fool and Lord Golden and sort of coming to terms with how real both of those characters are and both of them being characters.
Yeah, and it happens pretty soon here. There's a small scene. Lord Golden is bringing out food for Fitz and says, here, you can have this meal. I didn't forget you. But if the huntswoman would enjoy it, I would be pleased to share a meal with her while we await those cursed wagons. And she sends a glance over at Fitz saying, like, I can't miss this opportunity, basically. I'm sorry, but this is way too good to pass up. And they head off,
right,
arm in arm. And they're talking already about feathers and game birds and stuff. And this is where Fitz is like, oh, Lord Golden is also real. It's not just an act.
Right.
Reality reordered itself around me. Lord Golden, I suddenly realized, was every bit as complete and real a person as the Fool had been. He talks about how the Fool had been basically an outcast, had been considered a freak.
He specifically said the Fool had been a colorless little freak, which I thought was kind of rude. That's your friend, Fitz. Don't say that.
Those who had feared his wickedly barbed jests and been repulsed by his pallid skin and colorless eyes had been the vast majority of the castle folk. But just now, an intelligent and, I must admit, very attractive young woman had chosen Lord Golden's companionship over mine. So completely different people now.
Yeah. And I find this really interesting because I think it is something that Fitz will continue to struggle with throughout the series.
Yeah.
This whole, how well do I actually know Beloved? How well do I know who this person really is, especially when the Amber scene happens?
Yes.
Like now there's another person that Fool is pretending to be. Mm-hmm. Who's the real one? What's happening? And
because this one he can reconcile. Is like he was let in on this one, right?
Yes.
Like he was there at the beginning, like, oh, I'm going to go as an aristocrat because he visited Fitz's cabin to begin with.
Right.
But the Amber one comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. And so I think this is the pebble that starts the avalanche of sort of this problem with their relationship, that Fitz is really struggling with the aspect of not feeling like he fully knows Fool.
Right. Yeah.
And this is just the start of that. And it would be a little confusing, I guess, especially because Beloved seems to be able to embody the characters so well. And of course, Fitz sees through it because he knows and loves Fool, and so can see the aspects that are similar and knows a lot of how the Fool is. The Fool did stuff like this in smaller form when he
Right.
was the Fool.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to reconcile in some ways. But I think this is the first time he's really thought like, oh, other people don't know Lord Golden is fake. Like, they believe in Lord Golden. And this was the first, the first moment of that happening. And then later at the keep, we see that falls into place more heavily. But I think this is the start of that. But also, I just wanted to say Laurel is like crushing on Lord Golden and excited to be taken away by him to have lunch together to talk.
Yeah.
And we had already talked about maybe she thinks Lord Golden likes men, and maybe Fitz and Lord Golden are like an item, or sorry, Tom and Lord Golden are an item. So does she think that, or is like, how is that affecting her judgment now? Is this an act that she's putting on? What do you think?
Very
that's
flattering that a noble who, as we see later, is treated like a visiting royal in status, is talking with and giving sole attention to basically a attendant.
Right.
It is very flattering and a very different social encounter than one would ever get.
That's fair.
Regularly.
I wonder if this weekend away or whatever it is sets the stage for Chade to be able to successfully woo Laurel.
Yeah, maybe.
Later on. But either way, Fitz very, after having this thought of like, man, a hot lady just didn't want to hang out with me and took the Fool up on his offer to hang out with him instead. I can't believe it. And then out loud says, well, there's no accounting for taste.
to her horse.
To her horse.
And Nighteyes wanders out saying, okay, what's in the napkin?
Right.
Fitz unveils 2 meat pies, which luckily there were 2. Lord Golden assumed that Fitz was going to be hungry because he doesn't know that Nighteyes is here yet.
True.
And Nighteyes is like, I get one.
Yeah, one for me.
One for me. He didn't come all the way out of the bramble, but kind of stayed a little bit hidden. But he's near Fitz now. And Fitz says this is one of the great things about the wit is that you can have a conversation while you're both stuffing your faces and you're not choking. So they talk as they're eating. And he's wondering, how did you find me and why did you come to find me? And Nighteyes says, well, I found you just as I'd find any flea bite. Why? What else was I to do? You could not have expected me to stay in Buckkeep town with a cat? Please. Bad enough that you reek of that creature. I could not have abided sharing space with him. Hap will worry about you when he discovers you are missing. Perhaps, but I doubt it. He was so excited to come back to Buckkeep town. Why a boy would find it enticing, I do not know. There is nothing but noise and dust, no game worth speaking of, and far too many humans crammed into one space. Then you came after me solely to spare yourself that aggravation. It had nothing to do with being concerned for me or missing me. If you and the scentless one hunt, then I should hunt with you. That is only sense. Hap is a good boy, but he is not the best hunter. Better to leave him safe in town. But we are on horseback, and, my friend, you are not as fleet as you used to be, nor do you have the endurance of a young wolf. Best you go back to Buckkeep town and keep watch over the boy. Or maybe you could just dig a hole right here and bury me. What? His bitterness startled the word out of me. I did choke on the cider I was drinking. Little brother, do not treat me as if I am already dead or dying. If you see me that way, then I would rather truly be dead. You steal the now of my life away when you can constantly fear that tomorrow will bring my death. Your fears clutch cold at me and snatch all my pleasure in the day's warmth from me. As yet not in a long time, the wolf dropped all the barriers between us. I suddenly perceived what I had been hiding from myself. The recent reticence between us was not entirely Nighteyes' doing. Half of it was mine, my retreat from him for fear that his death would be unbearably painful for me. I was the one who had set him at a distance. I was the one who had been hoarding my thoughts from him. Yet enough of my feelings had reached past that wall that he was wounded by them. I had been on the verge of abandoning him. My slow pulling away from him had been my resignation to his mortality. Truly, since the day I had pulled him back from death, I had not seen him as fully alive. It is incredibly rare that someone can show you and show you the emotions and the things that happen to make you have a full realization
Right.
of where you've been going on. And it's so lucky that they have that bond and they can do that. It's incredibly sad that that has happened and that Nighteyes has had to deal with it. But also, good on him for being able to drop those barriers and show Fitz that,
Yeah.
hey, don't act as if I'm already dead, because I'm not yet.
Yeah, and especially being able to sort of tell Fitz that that's ruining what life he has left, you know? That, yeah, he's getting old and he's not going to live forever, but you're taking away the comfort of the now that I enjoy as a wolf with your human worry of the future. And I can't enjoy the moment of now because I'm so worried that I'm about to die because you're worried I'm about to die.
Right.
And not only that, but you've pulled away from me. And it obviously was something that both of them were doing to some extent.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, especially because Nighteyes was so upset over being saved the way he was. But I think it's fair to say that Fitz kept those walls up. It's a lot like when he moved away from all his friends and family at Buckkeep from last trilogy, and it started as like, oh, I'm protecting them, and then just turned into they don't want to hear from me. It's been so long.
Right.
And Fitz just has that tendency to pull away and think he's doing it because that's what's best for everyone. But especially with Nighteyes and their relationship, it's just hurtful. And so I'm glad that they get to clear this up. And I'm sad because it's not going to last very long, unfortunately. Spoiler. I mean, it'll last a little bit, but it's just really sad that they had to go through this and spend so much of the book already not with each other, not fully talking all that often.
Yeah.
All because Fitz is so afraid of the pain of losing him, which super fair. I'm already afraid of the pain, and Nighteyes isn't real, like, but he's real to me.
Fitz also says that the wit forms that bond that doesn't require any explanation. So instead, he just speaks his apology out loud, saying, Hap is old enough to take care of himself. From now on, we hunt together. Nighteyes immediately changes tacks and says, okay, so what do we hunt then? A boy and a cat, Prince Dutiful. Ah, the boy and the cat from your dream. Well, at least we shall know them when we find them.
And this is really interesting because it freaks out Fitz, first of all, because Nighteyes is able to put it all together so quickly and isn't shocked. And it took Fitz so long to come to terms with the fact that he had that connection.
Like, okay, that's the quarry. Let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. Nighteyes is like, all right, well, that's how it is. No changing it. But it also brings up the thought that it's not just Fitz sharing that bond with Dutiful. It is Nighteyes there too.
Right. I mean, Fitz's skill and wit are so intertwined that they're basically the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. And when Fitz reaches out, I've already kind of talked about my theory on this. He does with both at all times.
Yeah.
So I think that's how he finds human beings in the skill, is like through the wit connection.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's how he connected with Dutiful all those times that he was asleep anyway. So Nighteyes would have been aware of those.
Right. And it's really interesting. And if you think about it, Fitz has a history, I think it's only happened once, maybe twice, where Nighteyes is able to go through the skill into other people's minds. So it's not unheard of that Nighteyes would be aware of things, but it's kind of freaky to think about this was a dream or a few dreams that Fitz has had, and Nighteyes didn't comment on them at all, but he was there.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, oh, well, what else does Nighteyes know? Also, really funny to me that Nighteyes just does accept that that's somebody that Fitz knows, but never thought to ask Fitz who it was. And Fitz the whole time is like, what a weird dream.
Fitz does ask, okay, so but how are you going to get across the river? And Nighteyes says, don't ask me and don't gawk if you discover me. You'll figure it out. And then gives him permission to take a nap because Nighteyes will stand watch. And Fitz is very grateful for that and falls asleep immediately without a care because he knows that Nighteyes is watching over him.
Yeah, and it's so cute and makes me so sad. But it's really cute that in this moment, all is forgiven and they're back to how it always has been. And that is the thing that brings Fitz the most comfort and lets him sleep.
And then wakes him up when they're coming, which is the next part here. Lord Golden and Laurel stood at the edge of the field. I lifted a hand in recognition of them, and they came reluctantly to my feet. Both Whitecap and Malta came to my chirrup. Only my black went out to the end of the picket line and had to be drawn in. Once I had her reins, she surrendered and came with me as if she had never contemplated anything else. I led them to meet the oncoming wagons. When I noticed a set of gray wolf legs beneath one of the wagons, I looked aside. Nighteyes is like, don't gawk at me, so he doesn't.
Yep. He gives him the space and is like, didn't see anything.
So the ferry was large. The wagons came and were loading up on the ferry there. And Fitz was the last aboard, and he had to kind of drag my black onto the ferry. Eventually, she goes on, and Fitz thinks, well, the horse probably went on more for the companionship of the other horses rather than me, but we're all on anyways.
Right. And it's not the longest ride, but it is long enough that they don't get to Galeton until dark.
Yeah, and it was full dark before they were kind of on the other side of the river and offloaded, because they could have kept going on, but Lord Golden said, well, we're not going to stay here in the inn. We'll just follow the wagons because they know the path.
Exactly.
So they have to wait for everyone to be unloaded and the wagons to set up again, and they follow the wagons in to Galeton.
And as they're going, it's not a fun ride because the carts ahead of them are bringing up dust and making them ride through a bunch of dust.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're dirty and grimy, and Fitz is still tired and wants more sleep. I mean, he didn't get a ton of sleep the night before, so makes sense. And
he's older now and he's not used to hard days in the saddle.
Exactly. So he's tired and grumpy, and he starts thinking about how he wants the fool's companionship. I long suddenly to have a quiet talk with the fool, to somehow connect again to the healthy young man I had once been. But I reminded myself neither Fitz nor the fool were here, only Lord Golden and his man Badgerlock. The sooner I fix that in my mind, the better for both of us. And Laurel and Lord Golden are continuing on their conversations from before. And it's not that he can't join in with them, but he just feels weird doing it. So he feels as though he's a third wheel, and he's once again sort of pouty about the loss of the friendship that he was hoping to rekindle in this moment. Like, he thought this journey would be a friendly romp in the night with his friend, like he thought he and his friend were gonna go hunting for the missing prince and come back, and it's not that at all, especially because Laurel's here. And so again, we see him getting dogged down by this presence of Lord Golden and his role as Lord Golden's serving man.
So they get to Galeton, which resides along the Antler River. It's a small tributary of the Buck. And it's a very small river, so that's why wagons have to go from the Buck River to Galeton to bring in goods that can't be shipped. But that river does kind of water all of the surrounding lands and fields.
Mm-hmm.
The Brasinga Manor was on a small rise that overlooked the little town. In the dark, it was impossible to see the extent of the great house, but the spacing of the candlelit windows convinced me it was substantial. The wagons entered through the gate of a long stone wall, and we followed unchallenged. When the drivers pulled up in the wagon yard beside the manor, men with torches came out to meet them. I noted the absence of barking dogs and thought it odd. And so Lord Golden leads them, Laurel and Badgerlock, onto the main entrance of the manor itself. Before they even had gone up the steps, servants opened the doors and they were kind of being ushered into the main hall here. They were expected because the messenger that Lord Golden had sent earlier had arrived and they had prepared for the arrival of this foreign noble.
Yes. And it's a very warm welcome.
Yeah.
Fitz sort of is in awe of the size of the home that the Brazingas have and is just sort of taking everything in. He's a servant, so he's not expected to do much, but Lord Golden is being sort of talked to by Lady Brazinga and what Fitz assumes to be civil. And
Yes.
then Laurel also has sort of a group of people surrounding her because she's the queen's huntswoman. And so the huntswoman of the keep here is talking to her about how he'll take her out to the best hunting spots tomorrow so they can find something suitable for the queen. But Fitz is left to just sort of take everything in.
And there is a description of Lady Brasinga and Civil here, as well as Fitz's awareness of Civil. He gave me an odd glance in passing, then directed his attention back to his mother and Lord Golden. An odd little shiver of awareness danced across my skin. The wit. Someone here was old blood and concealing it with consummate skill. I breathed a thought of warning to the wolf. Be small. His acknowledgement was more subtle than the scent of night flowers when day comes, yet I saw Lady Brasinga turn her head slightly as if to catch a distant sound. Too soon to be certain, yet I felt that Chade's and my suspicions were well founded. So I noted that Civil gave Fitz an odd look, and I cannot remember for the life of me if the piebalds warned that there would be somebody coming who would be witted to hunt the prince down, or if this is another possible hint of like, oh, who's this with Lord Golden kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think.
Or another thought that just came to me because of Fitz getting dressed later, is this Civil being like, he looks familiar because of the farcier features?
It definitely could be. I mean, later Fitz says that he looks a lot like Verity and like his dad,
Right.
Chivalry. And so we know that Dutiful is his biological son. It could be that he looks vaguely familiar. I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it. I think because right after Fitz feels something weird with the wit, they're trying to suss out if any of the people have wit, and
Right.
maybe something he is doing unknowingly makes it clear that he does have it to other witted people.
Yeah,
I mean,
could be.
I know that he worked with Black Rolf to sort of learn how to close off his communications and learn the old blood way of how to use wit properly, but we don't know how successful he is in that because Black Rolf wasn't like the greatest teacher. He was so adamant of separating Fitz and Nighteyes that we don't know how much was taught to how much Fitz really learned in that environment, right? Like he did learn something, but was it enough to hide?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think could be really anything.
Yeah, as you were saying, Laurel's kind of surrounded as well because of the huntswoman, and they have to, scout these grounds for the queen's hunt. It's also a very important task there. And Fitz is standing there waiting to be directed because he is playing the role of a servant. So someone else comes over, a serving woman, and says, undoubtedly, Lord Golden will probably want a bath. And Fitz is like, yep, definitely. Let's get this all situated. So they're shown to Lord Golden's rooms.
He is shown alone to get everything set up.
And he unpacks Lord Golden's stuff, or tries to.
There's so much stuff shoved into the little bags that Fitz can't figure out how it was all fit in there in the first place. But he also mentions that the room Lord Golden is given is the size of his entire cottage back home. So this is a huge room, and he's now panicking because, well, not really panicking, but a little bit like, oh no, I have to be a serving person. What do they do again? And sort of just trying to think of
Thinks of Charum,
Cherub,
Prince
yeah.
Verity's serving man.
Yeah, and like, what did they do? What am I supposed to be doing right now? So it's really interesting to have him sort of run through and be like, okay, so I think I need to put all this stuff away and then light a fire to make sure my lord or my master can be warm out of his bath, and turn down the covers of his bed and lay out a linen shirt for bedtime, and giggle to himself about how surprised Lord Golden will be.
Yeah. And then once that's done, he turns to his own serving man's room that's attached, and sees to his own unpacking, which he thought was going to be very short and very easy. Instead, when he gets to the package that he got from the tailor, he says that the package seems to burst apart, and the fool had reneged on Lord Golden's promise to keep me poorly dressed. The clothing the tailor had sewn was the best quality I had ever possessed in my life. There was a set of servants' blues, better tailored than what I wore now, and of a finer weave. 2 snowy shirts of linen were more elegant than what most servants wore. There was a doublet of rich blue, with dark hose with a gray stripe in it, and another in deep green. I held the green doublet up against me. The doublet skirt came almost to my knees, longer than I was accustomed to, and yellow embroidery ran riot over it. Yellow leggings. I shook my head. There was a wide leather belt to fasten about it. Lord Golden's golden cock pheasant was embroidered on the breast of the jerkin. I rolled my eyes at my reflection. Truly the fool had expressed himself in these clothes for me. Dutifully I put them away. No doubt he would soon find an excuse to make me wear them. Fitz is like, these are ridiculous clothes, but they're very, very nice. I don't want to wear them.
Yeah, per usual, Fitz hates fashion. He's anti-fashion. So getting all these nice clothes is like, ugh, for him. But he does, I mean, he is going to wear them if he has to. That's the role he's playing, and so he will.
And he's like, I'm sure the fool's going to make me wear them.
Mm-hmm. And as he's finishing that up, he hears a knock at the door, and it is the bathtub for Lord Golden.
Yep, with the different buckets of water, some hot and some cooler, to mix together to get the right temperature. And then 2 men arrived carrying the painted screens that would protect him from drafts.
And another lad arrived carrying a tray of scented oils that might be chosen from.
Yes.
And yet another with a towering stack of towels. I have not always been swift at appraising social situations, yet dim as I was awakening to Lord Golden's social stature. A welcome as effusive was more likely to be accorded to royalty, rather to a landless noble of dubious origin. Obviously, his popularity at court far exceeded my initial regard of it. It chagrined me that I had not previously perceived it. Then, with unerring certainty, I knew the reason for it. I knew who he was. I knew his past, or far more of it than any of his admirers did. To me, he was not the exotic and fabulously wealthy nobleman that some distant Jamalian family. To me, he was the fool, in the midst of one of his elaborate pranks, and I was still expecting that at any moment he could cease his juggling and let all his flying illusions come clattering to the ground. But there was no moment of revelation awaiting. Lord Golden was real, as real as the fool had been to me. I stood stock still, a moment, reeling in that unveiling thought. Lord Golden was as real as the fool, and hence, the fool had been as real as Lord Golden. So who was the man that I had known for most of my life? And then he feels a hint of a presence at the window.
Yeah. So that, it could be something like, people could be reading this and like, oh, wow, yeah, Lord Golden is also real. Great job. He's a great actor. But the final sentence there that Fitz says, the fool had been as real as Lord Golden. So now Fitz is like, was he acting with me too?
Right.
Like, is this all a facade?
Right. And of course, other people believe in Lord Golden. They don't know who he is. They are just taking him for his word that he is a noble from Jamalia.
And that's what Fitz did. Like, they don't, like, of course, he believes that the fool was just the fool. He took him at his word of what his past was. Like, this is where Fitz's mind is going. Like, I'm in the same place. Who is the man that I've known all my life?
And I think it's really interesting because Fool did already tell Fitz that the Fool was not his name.
Right.
Like that was a character he was playing, and
Yeah.
the only person who saw through the character really was Fitz and Shrewd. But Fitz is the one who gave the Fool the name the Fool.
Yeah.
That became a name, not just a moniker. And I think Fitz didn't really put a lot of stock into that when it was being told to him while he was a little tipsy and, falling asleep. But it's really interesting here to have that reality be in your face of, oh, this person is capable of creating an entirely new personality and
Right.
living in it. And who are they really? So I do feel bad a little bit for Fitz here because he is really struggling with this. And I don't think it helps later when he's having that fight with Fool,
Yeah.
the big one that comes up. But I think this especially is something that he has to deal with, this sort of rationalization of, do I trust that my friend is who they say they are in front of me and that the person I know, the Fool, is the real person? Or do I continue to distrust everyone in my life?
And that's the big part of it, is that word trust, because when Chade asks him, do you trust anybody?
Yeah.
Fitz is finally like, I think the Fool, right? Because he
Yeah.
knows everything about me. That's what trust is. And now Fitz is finding out, like, do I know everything about him?
Yeah.
Does he trust me back? Like,
it feels like a one-way street. Like I
Yeah.
trust him, but he must not trust me. And I don't know.
So it's just kind of like his paranoia and his misguided view of what trust is that kind of creates this schism, I think. But yeah, so he has that, and he's interrupted by Nighteyes coming to report.
And Nighteyes lets him know there are cats everywhere.
Yes. And Fitz is like, there's more than one? Dutiful's cat was a gift from this family. Perhaps they favor them as coursing animals. Nighteyes says, yeah, that's a certainty. I have little desire to meet one in the flesh. All I have known of them I have learned since this afternoon, when Hap proposed that I should be friendly with one. I did no more than put my nose into the door when that orange fury flew at me, all claws and spitting. I know no more of them than you do. Byrrc never kept cats about the stable. He was wiser than either of us knew. And at that time, Lord Golden has entered, and Fitz hears the door closing. So once again, he can sneak up on Fitz, whether or not he is the Fool or Lord Golden.
Yes.
It's just always a constant there. And Fitz says, Master, I have seen to arranging your things. Your bath awaits. Well done, Badgerlock, and the night air is refreshing. Is the view pleasant? Excellent, sir. The room commands a wide view of the river valley, and the night is fine, with a near full moon that would set most wolves howling. Is it? So Lord Golden crosses swiftly over and looks down and smiles at Nighteyes, pleased to see him there. A good night indeed. Doubtless many night creatures are abroad hunting tonight. May our hunting tomorrow go as well as theirs does by moonlight. Unfortunate indeed that I must put off my hunting until tomorrow. Tonight I am invited to sup late with Lady Brisinga and her son Civil, but they have excused me for a bit that I might refresh myself. You will, of course, attend me at the dinner. Of course, master. Fitz is kind of sad because he wants to be out hunting with Nighteyes at night here.
Yes.
And the Fool is, saying like, hey,
we have
Nighteyes.
roles to play.
Yeah, we have roles, but Nighteyes, yeah, definitely. That's great. You can go hunt around tonight.
Exactly. And Nighteyes also agrees and says, hey, you take care of inside, I'll take care of outside, and then we'll discuss.
Be home sooner.
Exactly. Which sort of makes Fitz a little sad. And then he's confused by that reaction because doesn't he want to be at home and free and not Lord Golding's serving man? Like, why doesn't he feel as excited about going home?
Because you have friends and you can socialize, Fitz.
Poor Fitz.
So he resumes the role of a serving man here, takes Lord Golden's coat and eases him from his boots, brushes and hangs the jacket, gave the boots a hasty dusting, and, helps Lord Golden kind of get ready for his bath. And Lord Golden, is still playing his role as well, saying, I
Mhm.
shall wear this and this and this, lay them out for me.
Get the dark blue outfit out. It sounds
Yes.
like a really cute outfit.
Then pour the buckets and be generous with the rose oil. Then set the screens and leave me to my thoughts for a bit. And then says, oh, and please take some water to your own chambers and wash up.
Right. When we dine, I shall want to smell the food, not you standing behind me. Oh, and wear the dark blue tonight. I think it'll set off my own garb. So it's really fun because he's using his position to still take care of Fitz, but having fun with the role of like a serving man.
Oh, yes. And the fool definitely, or Lord Golden, should I say, definitely planned all of his outfits and has everything, and then thought, okay, what would look good on Fitz and complement my own
Yes,
outfit?
exactly.
And then also says one more thing, put this on, but I counsel you to keep it covered unless you truly need it, and gives him back Jinna's charm.
And Fitz is disappointed to have it back, but takes it anyway.
Yes, yeah. So they both retreat to their own sections and wash up a bit. Fitz hurries, knowing that his services would soon be required. I struggled with my doublet, finding that it had been tailored far more close-fitting than I was accustomed to. There was scarcely room to conceal Chade's roll of tools, let alone the small knife that I decided I would carry. I could scarcely wear a sword into the dining room on a social occasion, but I found I did not wish to go completely unarmed. The wolf's secreted approach to the wit tonight had infected me with wariness. And then he realizes he hadn't heard splashing for some time, so asks, do you require my assistance? Scarcely. A shadow of the fool was in Golden's drawled sarcasm. He emerged from behind the screen, fully dressed and adjusting the fall of lace at his cuffs. A small smile of pleasure at surprising me was playing about his mouth as he lifted his eyes to me. Abruptly, the smile faded. For a time, he simply stared at me, mouth slightly ajar. Then his eyes lit. As he advanced to me, satisfaction shone in his face. It's perfect, he breathed, exactly as I had hoped. Oh, Fitz, I always imagined that, had I the chance, I could show you off as befitted you. And look at you. His use of my name was as astonishing as the way he gripped my shoulders and propelled me toward the immense mirror. For a moment, I looked only at the reflection of his face over my shoulder, alight with pride and satisfaction. Then I shifted my gaze and stared at a man I scarcely recognized. His directions to the tailor must have been very complete. The doublet encased my shoulders and chest. The white of the shirt showed at the collar and the sleeves. The blue of the doublet was buck blue, my family color, and even if I now wore it as a servant, the cut of the doublet was not that of a servant, but of a soldier. The tailoring made my shoulders look broad and my belly flat. The white of the shirt contrasted with my dark skin and eyes and hair. I gazed at my own face in consternation. The sharpness of my scars had faded with my youth. There were lines on my brow and starting at the corners of my eyes, and somehow these lessened the severity of the scar's passage down my face. I had long ago accepted the modification of my broken nose. The streak of white in my hair was more noticeable with my hair drawn back in a warrior's tail. The man who looked back at me from the mirror put me somewhat in mind of Verity, but even more of the portrait of king-in-waiting chivalry that still hung in the hall at Buckkeep. I look like my father. The prospect both pleased and alarmed me. Only to someone seeking that resemblance, the fool replied. Only someone knowing you enough to peer past your scars would see the farseer in you. Mostly, my friend, you look like yourself, only more so. You look like the Fitz chivalry that was always there, but kept hidden by Chade's wisdom and subterfuge. Did you never wonder at how your clothes were cut, simply and almost rough, to make you look more stable-handed soldier than Prince's bastard? Mistress Hasty, the seamstress, always thought the orders came from Shrewd. Even when she was allowed to indulge in her fripperies and fashion, it was only the ones that drew attention to themselves and her sewing skills, and away from you. But this, Fitz, this is how I have always seen you, and how you have never seen yourself. So Fitz is looking at the mirror here, and he says to himself that he's never been a vain man, but it takes a moment, but he does see that it's a look of maturity and not age.
Yeah, it's not.
And not degeneration.
Yeah, it's just normal aging. It's not.
I think this is his way of saying, like, I look good.
Yeah, well, he says, I don't look that bad, which is the closest he's gotten to self-love in his
Right.
whole entire life.
And the fool replies to that, I have been places where women would have fought one another with knives over you. And now I fear if I wonder if I've taken it too far. Oh, well, flirt with people, see what you get.
Yeah. I think this is sort of heartwarming and sad. Heartwarming in that Fitz is able to finally see himself the way he always should have been.
Yeah.
And sad for the same reason that he hasn't been able to be this version of himself. And also that resemblance to his father. And I think his mixed emotions are really telling that the first trilogy, there's a lot of hatred towards chivalry, it feels like, from Fitz's part. He is mad. His dad abandoned him and doesn't care about him and never asked about him. And he learns, I believe he learned last trilogy that wasn't fully the case. I think he learns more this trilogy.
Yes. Yeah. But Verity, I think, says that chivalry looked in on him and things like that.
Right. But I think
him aging too helps a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
maybe the forging, he might have put some of that anger.
That's true.
I don't know.
But it is that sort of sadness of like, wow, I look like my dad, and not that being a horrible thing, because he did hate hearing that. People told him that growing up, and he did not love that comparison. Like, he wanted to be his own person or whatever. But he is, now in a space where he can kind of be proud of that. Like, hey, I haven't done that bad. And I think that really does also show how much Starling's words really did wound him.
Yeah, true. Do you want to talk about him in his youth as well? Always having poor fitting clothing and things like that, which is very smart on Shade's part and Shrewd's part. However, well-fitting clothes and feeling good really helps people's confidence.
Yeah.
A lot. And never having that on purpose is so hard, because in this, when he undoubtedly looks good, and even through Fitz's brain, he's like, yeah, I look pretty good.
Oh, wow. I actually look cool.
I haven't degenerated.
Yeah. Starling was wrong.
Yeah. It's so hard to read, because you can think back to as a kid and how the only person who really told him he looked good was Molly, probably.
Right.
That was his only affirmation.
Yeah, it's tough. And I know I did talk earlier in this chapter about how there are a lot of things he overlooked having, there are a lot of privileges he had that he overlooked because, of course, he was a child. And how do you know what you're getting that others aren't? But I think this also speaks to, even though there were a lot of things afforded to him, a lot of times even the niceties of what he was due for his status were sort of diminished.
Yeah,
because
to not draw attention to himself.
Yeah, because of his position and just the tumultuous time that there was in his childhood. And I think that's also sad, because he should be used to wearing really nice clothes that fit him well, that look nice on him, and he's not. So.
And even with the fool saying, I fear I must wonder if my fancy has succeeded too well. You will not pass without remark, but perhaps that is for the best. Flirt a bit with the kitchen maids, and who knows what they will tell you. Fitz rolls his eyes at the fool's mockery.
But it's not mockery.
It's not mockery.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit joking, I probably went too far. Flirt a bit, but he's still telling the truth.
Yeah, the mockery isn't you look so good, ha ha. The mockery is man, you're gonna have to flirt with so many people now.
Yeah.
And and mockery isn't even the right word, but the joke is the flirting, not the way Fitz looks.
Nothing finer than we two has dined in these halls before, he decided emphatically. He squeezed my shoulder and then stood straight. Abruptly, Lord Golden again. Badgerlock, the door. We are expected. I jumped to obey my master. Somehow, those few moments with the fool had restored my tolerance for this new charade of ours. I even found my interest warming to it. If Prince Dutiful were here at Galeton, as I suspected he was, we would find him out before the night was through. And that's kind of where it ends. So, yeah, we see the role kind of chafing on him a bit, and his disappointment at not being able to reconnect with the fool after, a month apart or so,
Right.
really chafing on him there. And these small moments of, yeah, the fool is still there. We are still best friends and can connect on that.
Yeah.
It's enough to kind of reinvigorate him and be like, yeah, I can do this.
I think it's hard for Fitz because of the way that he views himself and love, because he sort of needs to be reassured a lot, right? Like he
Right.
needs that verbal confirmation of, hey, I care about you. You're my friend. This is a game. He needs that every once in a while. And when he doesn't get that, what happens today happens, where he sort of gets more and more grumpy and sullen that, like, who even is this person? Are they even my friend? I think that is part of it, that he, yes, he understands on some level this is all for a reason and that he has to play a role. But I think because he is the person that needs that confirmation, that makes it harder for him, especially when
Right.
it involves somebody who he cares about.
Yeah.
It's not
Exactly.
just him playing a role, it's him and his friend playing a role. And are they really playing a role?
Right. Yeah. Well, another kind of setup chapter. Pretty introspective, but we also get the reunion of Nighteyes and Fitz here, which is great.
Yes.
And yeah, we kind of get into the plot a little bit more here.
Yeah, a little bit of hints that the Razingas may or may not be witted.
Right.
Seems likely. And also that cats are everywhere, so finding the one cat's going to be a little bit difficult.
Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you have thoughts or questions, please do not hesitate to reach out either through social media or email. You can find us at isfitshappy@gmail.com or on social medias. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, Reddit. You can find us at isfitshappy at all of those.
We look forward to hearing from you. All right, time for our favorite part. Let's talk about what people have brought to our attention.
Yeah.
And this week we're starting with Blue Sky. We had a couple comments from Degenhart. First and foremost, being disappointed that Luke did not know the dragon was a
The
Spinosaurus.
the
Sorry,
dragon. Wow.
dinosaur.
I was talking about in the previous section, we were talking about Malta's crest. And I had seen some fan art that looked like the fin that goes on the back of that one dinosaur. And I wanted to say a Spinosaurus, but I didn't want to be wrong. So, so thank you very much for looking it up and confirming that my thought was correct.
Yes. Also, Degenhart commented to talk about how they feel as though Beloved doesn't, they don't think Beloved dislikes women or thinks them petty. They are indeed good friends with them. Althea, Jack Kettricken, when they were puppet maker in the mountain, etc. They only dislike those who are interested in Fitz. So, good point. Definitely Beloved can like women. Especially, I mean, I guess if you think about it too, what I didn't think about last time we were discussing this topic is that Beloved thinks that the person in the mountains that they stayed with, their son, could potentially be the foretold son in the final trilogy that
Right,
ends up
yeah.
being B.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting at the time, and I didn't think about it until later, but why would he think that that could potentially be his son that is being talked about? Or the son, I guess. It doesn't have to be his son, but
Yeah.
I don't know. So you're right. There are definitely women that Beloved enjoys talking to or being friends with or potentially has crushes on. Who knows?
And then the last comment on Blue Sky that Degenhart made was talking about the male and male friendships. That it's very sad that it has to be abnormal for two men in a friendship to not be intimate and close. So it's kind of like I don't know, because we were talking about how Robin Hobb might just be writing from the perspective of a woman in
Yes.
friendships, and that's why like a lot of people read in like that close intimacy between Fitz and the Fool, and maybe it's just kind of a perspective issue, and that's why she's adamant that no, it's not, they're just friends, and
Right.
why other people read romance.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just kind of like a comment on that it's this has to be an abnormal situation, and that is a sad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Also, thank you for bringing up the theme of being close doesn't have to be sexually attracted to one another. Love is a spectrum as well. And that is true. Definitely true.
Hmm.
Thank you very much for those comments on Blue Sky.
Yes. We also have a message from Eli on Instagram who wrote in to talk about the end of the first book. They're a little bit behind, so they probably won't hear this for a while, but it's a really good topic, so we wanted to talk about it now. So Eli is talking about something I hadn't thought about on my second re-listen, audiobooks. But when Fitz was mad at Burek about not being able to heal him, and Burek says that Fitz isn't a beast, doesn't Webb mention in the end of the Tawny Man trilogy how Burek has an old blood healing trait thought lost? Something along the lines that, at least from what I recall, adds another layer to Burek's distress about not being able to heal Fitz and how he probably could heal him if he were a beast.
Yeah, the thing that Burek has is an ability that helps heal animals better or quicker or something that Webb
Yeah.
thought was lost long ago. And it says, it popped up with Burek here, somebody who abhors the wit, believe it or not.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a really cool link to that first book, actually. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, I really like the idea that Burek is aware of that skill and more heartbroken for not being able to use it in this instance.
Right, yeah.
So I think that's really interesting. I love that idea.
And I'm sure at the time in the first book we were discussing it, we were kind of focused on how Burek didn't want Fitz to be a beast because of the
Yes.
wit and all that sort of stuff. So we didn't really focus on maybe another depth or layer to it.
Yeah. So thank you for pointing that out, Eli. Very cool. We also got a message on Instagram from Gil, who was talking about a few different things. First is that after listening to episode 253, which is chapter 5 of the current book that we're on, there were 2 mentions of amber in the chapter, amber eyes and amber face. And after having all these wink wink moments in live ship that Amber is the Fool, this feels like a wink wink that the Fool is Amber to those who haven't made the connection like me. And I totally missed that the first time I read the books.
Which is really cool. I didn't even think to look for those little moments like I did in live ship. So.
Yeah, so I think that is a fun little, like, hey, remember, this is Amber.
Yeah.
Although I guess we do later get absolute confirmation. So, but it is Robin Hobb, so there are absolutely little hints sprinkled in.
Right.
Also, Gil said that whenever they read the name Piebald, they think of the Arthur episode where Buster loses a pie eating contest. I don't know why, which is really funny. I loved Hey Arthur as a kid, so I know exactly the episode you're talking about.
You do? I don't remember it.
You don't remember it?
No.
I don't know. I loved that show, so love that reference.
I do love that show. I just don't remember it.
I think it's because Buster didn't have very many. I don't know. He wasn't. I don't know.
He wasn't the focus of very many because it was
Yeah.
Arthur's show.
Yeah, it was Arthur's show. Whatever. Either way. Or no, I guess Buster's the best friend, so whatever.
Good show. Either way.
Also, Gil's bringing up, they said, I don't remember which episode/chapter this is from, but when Paragon was almost drowned, Amber got hit by serpent slime, and her clothes were tattered and basically became rags. I wonder how no one commented on the back tattoo or seeing something on her back, as I'm sure some of it was visible, as we learn about Fool's tattoos in Tawny Man.
This really interested me too, because my first thought was like, oh my gosh, you are so right. They should have had a full visible back tattoo.
Yeah.
Second thing I thought was, oh, wasn't it mostly just on one side of the body? But you still might see something peeking through. 3, they're sailors. They might a lot of them have tattoos, and it might not be anything to, think about. I don't know. Like, that wasn't really the focus. And Amber is such a private person that maybe they kind of prioritized covering themselves up. But there was that scene where Brashen's like, no, take yourself below. Stop seeing the Paragon because you are so injured. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I feel like, and maybe I'm misremembering already, but I feel like most of the slime slash spray, whatever it is, was on the side of Amber and mostly on the front. And I know that means that like the clothes are still tattered or whatever, but I think most of it is like concerning one half and mostly front facing. And therefore, because everyone's assuming Amber is a woman, nobody's really looking at Amber with the tattered clothing, especially if more of the front is the stuff that's falling. You'd want to give that privacy. So I feel like there's that excuse of like, maybe they were like, oh, I don't want to see something I'm not supposed to.
Or we could just be explaining away a plot hole. I don't know.
It absolutely could be a plot hole. I also feel like we'll have to see what the description of the tattoo is, but I think you're right that it is on one side. So maybe complete luck.
No,
or
I think the tattoo is across the whole back, but
more focused on one side.
I don't know.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. We're going to look to see.
Yeah.
And if it is on one side, more on one side than the other, it'll be interesting. It's really hard because in my mind, I just think of that one illustrative cover. I think we've shared it on our story before. I'll try to find it again to share it after this episode airs. But that's not necessarily what the tattoo looks like. That's just an artist's rendition.
Right. Yeah,
So,
we'll have to read in the text.
Yeah.
See what it explains.
Exactly. But good call. A very good question. I don't know. Maybe one of you guys has a better answer.
Then Gil's final comment here is talking about scrying and shade once again. We were talking about that in episode 259. And we were saying how we were kind of surprised at finding Fitz seeing Chade's scrying bowl in there and being like, oh, I recognize those, because he had been down to Chalced in the intervening years between the trilogies. Gil says, I'm pretty sure that when he tells Shrewd about the raid on Neat Bay, he says something to the effect of, I had a dream where the pocked man was scrying in a bowl and saw ... This is why we were confused and surprised, I think. I don't know if it got across, and I'm talking for you right now, Emma, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I was surprised, and we were having those conversations because we remembered that scene.
Yes.
And later on, Chade says, we got other people writing in about a conversation between Chade and Beric of like, maybe we should try him at the scrying bowl, like Fitz at the scrying bowl, to bring him back to his human self after he was in Nighteyes for a while. So we were not sure when it was introduced that Chade was scrying, and Fitz seemed surprised to see a scrying bowl and recognize it as such only because he had been to Chalced recently.
Yes.
So this seemed like something, if it was mentioned in the first book, that he kept from Fitz in some way, but Fitz was still aware of it somehow.
Right.
I don't know. That's why it was kind of confusing to me, at least.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's exactly how I felt. Like I remembered something like this happening where he very clearly knew what it was, and that Chade somehow practiced scrying sometimes. And this quote specifically, I think, is Fitz talking in code to Shrewd because they don't want people to know that he got a message from Verity, I believe, or something to that effect. Like, he can't say how he knows, so he has to say
it was from Chade.
It was from Chade. Yeah, you're right. So he can't say it's from Chade, so he has to like use code. But in order to use that code, he has to, number one, know what scrying is, and number two, know that it would make sense to the king that Chade would be scrying.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. It's kind of a confusing thing that I don't think the stories quite match up in the timelines of things. But
so maybe it's another plot hole.
Yeah, could be another slight mistake. But that happens when you don't plan out things.
Yeah, totally fine.
Between trilogies,
I haven't written a 16-book trilogy, so I have no room to judge.
Well, Emma, I don't think anyone's written a 16-book trilogy.
Oh yeah, this is. How many books are in this trilogy? 14?
Trilogy is 3 books.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry. Series, 16 book series. You had me misremembering, thinking I was speaking wrongly.
All right. Well, thank you very much for those comments, Gil. And we had some comments on our Facebook post as well. One was from Ellen. This is on the previous episode, 263, chapter 14. We had a conversation about how if a whip partner can have two, or if a witted person can have two wit partners.
Or more, multiple.
Or more, yes. And Ellen is wondering if we remembered how long it was between Nosy and Smithy. And I think that was like a year or two. I could be wrong. I thought it was like
a little bit more.
Nosy got removed when Fitz was like still 6, I thought. Maybe 7. And then Smithy, I thought, was like 8.
I think
8 or 9 because he started being trained, right?
Yeah, Nosy, because Nosy happens before Patience comes to the castle, and Patience doesn't come to the castle and meet Fitz and know him long enough to give the dog until a couple of years into his stay there.
Yeah, Shrewd sees him when he's 8 years old in the Great Hall, starts him being moved in and stuff like that. So I think it was like a year and a half, maybe a year between Smithy and Nosy.
Way more than that.
Because Fitz got to the castle, to the keep, at 6 years old.
Yeah.
And he had Nosy pretty much right away.
Right.
And they were with each other for a little bit at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then he met Shrewd at 8 and got moved into the castle.
Yeah.
But he had to leave to do chores and take Smithy out during that time.
Isn't Smithy the little dog Patience gives him?
No. Because she doesn't give him a dog, does she?
Yes, she gives him a dog.
You might be right on that, actually. I just was thinking about how he painted Smithy for Patience, and that was the only connection. But I do remember him having to keep Smithy in his rooms. It was at the castle for sure. So maybe 3 years then, in between the two.
Yeah, I mean, his father had to have died, and Patience is in the castle.
Yeah.
So, and not only is Patience in the castle, but now he's taking lessons from Patience, and it's like several months into that when she gifts him a dog, seemingly willy-nilly.
Okay.
So
yeah, probably 3 years then in between the two.
Sure. I don't know. Either way, I think it's a decent amount of time. And we have to remember that Nosy isn't dead. Nosy was just removed from being, so that also adds a different aspect to.
They were severed. Their partnership was, their bond was severed. But Ellen was asking that because of probably that. They were technically bonded for a while, and then he did bond another one. And then Ellen says, I do think you can be a partner to more than one animal at the same time, but you have had to have enough time and attention to honor both and / all bonds and deal with their feelings about sharing your time and attention. And it's probably just too much work, honestly. And that seems, kind of correct to me. It's probably technically possible, but there's not going to be a lot of people who would want to split time like that, especially animals.
Right. And I mean, assuming that you're going to do different animals, I mean, I guess you could do the same type of animal. Like dogs, it seems it would be easier to do because pack animal, but like a dog and a horse, for example, because that's something Fitz would realistically be able to do. Clearly, Nighteyes this chapter didn't love Fitz talking to a horse, so I don't know. Yeah.
It's a weird conversation because we don't know the extent of it. We're just kind of speculating. But
also,
from
Ellen,
what we've seen, probably is possible, but also very hard.
Yeah, and Ellen does bring up the fact that technically the cat that Dutiful is bonded to is also bonded to somebody else, even though that other person doesn't have a body.
Right.
So that's an example of an animal being double bonded, but
that's also a super young cat too.
And it's like a super weird situation because there's a human being residing with it? How does that affect things?
Yeah.
I don't know. So nobody knows, it seems. But we all have very good questions about the whole thing.
Ellen also has a comment about our discussion on if other beings, and specifically in this case it was Fennel,
Mm-hmm.
knew that Fitz was bonded to a wolf, or people could tell what kind of animal he was bonded to.
Right.
And Ellen reminds us that all the other people kind of act like their partners. Like Holly twitches and perches and turns her head and just listens and is quiet like her hawks. And Rolf lumbers around and is loud. So Fitz obviously has characteristics which are probably easily identifiable, but Fennel is just like, you're here, give me attention now. I don't care what you do outside.
Yeah. Like,
with your time.
yeah. Which I think is a fair read of the situation. So thank you, Ellen, for that. Cookie Baker also had a comment about how there's more information about hedge magic in a small illustrated book about pixies.
Yeah, that must be one of the short stories. So I don't know. Please let us know which one that is.
Yeah,
Because again, we have only read the one short story.
Yes. So Cookie Baker doesn't remember the name of the story either, but
Might be like Blue Boots or something. I know there's another one that's like around this time.
Well, apparently, it's about hedge magic, and it's something to do with pixies. And according to that story, the origin of hedge magic comes from other magical creatures, not humans, which seems to be one theory why Beloved is able to understand how to tinker with it, as we can see some of the part whites in Claris have other types of side magics. I also thought the crackpot theory why the whites have no imprint on the wit is because they are aliens.
So
which
two separate thoughts there.
Yeah, sorry, I should have separated them.
That's all right. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing to kind of explain why Beloved could mess with hedge magic and kind of still make it work.
Yeah.
Is because Beloved is part magical race.
Yeah.
Or comes from a certain kind of magic, which allows them to just kind of deal with it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But then you have people who have the skill and wit, and they can't quite do it. So I don't know. It's a very interesting thing, but if whites are completely different than humans and they're considered the quote unquote magical race, like more similar to like the pixies in this story.
Or dragons.
Do you think dragons can do hedge magic?
I don't know. They can do skill wit mixed.
Yeah.
So
if they're more similar, the whites are more similar to like the pixies from this story, maybe that's a reason why they can do hedge magic and it leaked over into humans and only certain humans can do it. I don't know. Without reading the story, we don't know.
Yeah, I just have to say that the idea that pixies exist in this world is really fun, but also really opens the door to, are there Bigfoot and Mothmen in...
Well, there are those forest old men with the blackened teeth or whatever, the red teeth.
Bigfoot's real and he lives in Buckkeep. So
I know we got in the first book, I think they talk about like tall tales and things like that. And one of them is Pexies, I think, is the Pexies will whisk you into the witness stones and you'll lose months and maybe come out pregnant, or you'll lose your baby if you are,
Yeah.
Or you'll come out with no time passed and say you've lived for hundreds of years.
Right.
So I think those are kind of like the mythological.
I think maybe I'm making this up, but I feel like will-o-wisps are also mentioned briefly.
Maybe it
in
might
the
have been
first trilogy. Maybe it was the same,
because it's kind of the same breath as like Pexies, Elderlings, and there's a couple other
or
things.
whatever. Yeah. So I don't know. I would really love to know that side plot, but hey, that's not what we're focusing on for this whole series.
We'll get to them.
But yeah, hopefully.
We'll get to the short stories at least. But yeah, the last thing that Cookie Baker mentioned is another crackpot theory, is that maybe the whites are aliens.
Yeah, I love that idea.
And that's why they have no imprint on the wit, because they don't belong to this natural world.
Yes, love. However, as previously discussed because magical races are apparently definitely canon. I think it's more so because they're just a different type of magic. But I do like the idea that Beloved is alien, part alien.
What if, because we know back in the day that dragons were more animalistic before they started bonding with humans and quote unquote made elderlings and they shared everything. We know the whites are ancient. So what if the whites lived alongside those animalistic dragons and they had to evolutionarily develop defenses against these dragons who could sense life forms around them?
I like that idea. That's a great tinfoil hat theory.
But we don't know when the whites lived.
Yeah. We also don't know anything about
that
that
time
whole,
at all.
the beginning of the world.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much for the comments. Very interesting thoughts there. We also have some emails to go through. I think we have 3 of them.
Yes. And we'll start with a message from Degenhart.
Yeah.
And
about hedge magic.
Yes. Degenhart points out rightly that it doesn't work for everybody, so it doesn't work is not a good stance to take for us when we're talking about hedge magic.
I'll let you finish what Degenhart says here, but I'll refute it a bit.
Okay. A remedy only has to work for most of, or a lot of people to be considered working, like a medicine or a vaccine. None of them work for everybody or have a 100% cure rate, yet still they are considered working and quite useful to have. Same with a charm, I'd say. Even if it only keeps 80% of predators away from your chickens, it's still better than not having it. Also, charms would be immensely overpowered if they worked 100% on everyone.
Right, and generally I agree with that, but in the conversation that we were having where we were talking about that, I think now, correct me if I'm wrong, Degenhart, on this. I'm trying to think back to last week. I think we were talking about how people with the skill sometimes are not born with any, predilection for the skill at all. They're like dead zones. And some people with the wit can barely feel anything about them, Not everybody has the same levels of things. And so why does everyone seem to be affected by hedge magic kind of thing? I think that's the conversation area that we were in.
Right.
At least I said that, and I believe that it doesn't work for everybody, so it doesn't work. Like that would be a reason to. I think it's hard to frame this argument because I think we're arguing for the same thing here. I think we're on the same side. I think I'm just attacking it from a different angle and trying to bring that back into this conversation. If it doesn't work for everybody, it doesn't work for anybody. My thought on saying that, or at least presenting that or agreeing with that, I don't remember who said it, is that it would have to be a basis of like 50% or 60%, like a verifiable not majority or close to even split, where a lot of people would also be saying it never worked for me and other people saying, oh, it worked for me. Then it would be more arguable, being like, okay, so it doesn't work. A lot of more people would be like, oh, it's a bunk magic kind of thing like that. But it seems that it does work on the majority, like you were saying. Right. So that's where what I agree with in that statement is that I think the percentages we were thinking of it working on people were different. And I didn't say that over the podcast.
I feel like the thing that's different about hedge magic, presumably, and other magics to me is that in other magics we see multiple examples of the magics not working or people not having the magic. And I guess it's hard. I'm going to take wit out of the equation because I think that one's like a special case. It's different. I think hedge magic and skill are a better, closer example to use. So with skill, we have seen that people who don't have skill, you can not have skill and still be affected by skill. But there are people who don't have skill and are not affected by skill.
Right.
And we have not seen the case and not had any indication that people who cannot make charms are not affected by charms.
Right.
So I think that's the big difference. That to me, that's the biggest difference is how do we have one magic that works on everybody, seemingly, regardless of their predilection towards the magic, and then another magic where sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's like with the dragons, sometimes they can talk to people, sometimes they can't. And I think
That goes hand in hand kind of with the skill thing, we think.
yeah. And so I don't know, wit's harder because it's hard to tell if somebody is aware of the natural world around them. Like that's just not really, I think there's a few times we get examples of people who seem extremely unwitted, and we see different levels of people acknowledging wit around them, but it also kind of seems like everybody has a base level of wit because it's the natural world and we're
Right.
part of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just like a hard it's a hard system of magic where we don't really know what's going on.
Thank you, Degenhart.
Yes. We also got an email from listener Heaven, and they are first time writing in, long time listener. They're writing in to talk about the question I posed in episode 263, which is, can you have more than one witted partner at a time? And their theory is that Rob and Hobb would think no.
Yeah. So they're coming at it the same angle that we were talking about how Robin Hobb is a capitalist and talking about Fitz's transactional nature and how that everything works there.
Mhm.
And Robin Hobb is coming at this discussion and this magic in kind of the same way, in deeply rooted in her beliefs that there is like one true love for people, that there is one partner for you at a time.
Yeah. And so their theory is that this is like a monogamy take, and that Robin Hobb seems to show multiple examples of there needing to just be one love at a time, whether that is through the human relationships or the wit partner relationships.
Yeah. Specifically kind of calling out Fitz and Molly, where Fitz is like, well, I can't have Nighteyes if I have Molly too. Like they have to keep
Yeah.
those parts separate. And
Molly can't accept
yeah,
Fitz if Nighteyes is in the equation, and also Molly only being able to move on to Burek because Fitz is presumably dead.
right.
And then when Burek is dead, able to then take back Fitz and share that love. And then maybe that's why Fitz can't really love Jenna or Starling, because there's only that spot for Molly.
I never saw Kettricken because there's only that spot for Molly.
Uh-huh.
Like there's all these kind of examples, like Burek never moving on after Patience.
Yes.
Because Patience was still alive.
Yeah. And so it's sort of a theme that they've noticed where it sort of seems like Robin Hobb really likes that sort of one person at a time, one creature at a time. And also points out that even with Fitz and Fool's relationship, that has to be put on hold whenever Molly comes back into the equation,
Right.
because you can't have two great loves at the same time, even if they're a different type of love, because you can only have one great love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a really interesting take, and I think I agree with it completely too. Like how it's a meta take about how Robin Hobb would approach the writing of it itself and not in the text, but
Yeah.
it's supported by textual evidence.
Yeah.
So I really like it.
Yeah, and I guess Hobb does have an example of polyamory in the text, right? We know that Beloved's family is
Yeah,
polyamorous. He has one mom and two dads, and they are all a couple, it seems, the way Beloved explains it.
or a family unit in some
Yes.
way.
Yeah. So that's not necessarily traditional, but Beloved is sort of the one-off, and I don't think we see any other relationships that have the multiple points of love.
Right.
And Beloved is treated differently by Fitz for believing that there could be those multiple points in a way. So
Yeah. Used as more of an
It's-
example of something different and exotic rather than the normal one partner.
yes. And so that could also be at play with thinking of a wit magic where you're bonded to an
Yeah.
animal. Like, of course, you're only going to bond to one animal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really liked the idea and the theory. Love it.
Also, Heaven said that they want more of your tinfoil hat theories, Emma. More and more. They want all of the tangents and everything, and think of me more as the serious one trying to keep the podcast on point and go
Yes.
forward.
I'd say that's fair. That's a fair. Yeah, I'm a talker. I yap.
We wouldn't have it any other way.
Yes. No. So I definitely love sharing my little theories, but sometimes we are like 4 hours in and I'm like, I can't put any more theories in this episode. We got to finish the episode. But yeah, I definitely, when I have them, I try to always put them in. So I'm glad that you like them and I hope other people do too.
Yeah.
They're not going away. So there's that. Be assured to those of you who like them. So thank you, Heaven, for your message. And then finally, we have a message from Jess, and it is about Bee and Fitz.
Yeah.
I'm so relieved Simon brought up Fitz's parenting to Bee. I thought I was missing something every time someone said he was a terrible parent to her. I know he makes some choices that have really bad consequences for her. I'm definitely not saying he's perfect. However, I was really proud of Fitz for always being respectful of her boundaries. He handles this with such grace. As a parent, it would really hurt to be pushed away like that, but he's never petty about it and he never makes her feel guilty for it. He just quietly respects her boundaries. I remember feeling really proud of him for that. I know we've got ages before we get to it.
Thank you for this comment.
Yeah.
I think as a fandom, we've all been very harsh on Fitz as a father, but
Yes.
also for very good reason.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get there, but I specifically remember when Molly is alive still and he's not very involved in Bee's life. And that's partially because like he can't touch her without
Right.
Bee crying and everything like that. And Bee's very attached to Molly. But also after Molly passes away during the grieving process, he is grieving as a husband, not as a father
Yeah.
during that time.
I don't see Fitz being the worst dad in the world while Molly's around. I did find the sort of less than willing attitude to be near her sort of weird. But again, as we've all discussed, that's sort of a boundary that she's putting up and he's respecting that. And so
It's also half Fitz too. Like
Yeah.
he's an isolationist, you know?
Yeah, like I think he definitely, I do appreciate that he's respecting that his daughter can't be around his touch.
Right.
And I wish he would dig deeper on maybe figuring out what that's about. But hey, nobody's perfect. I think it's more whenever Molly is gone that I have a bigger issue with his parenting style because he does really, pun intended, leave his daughter to the wolves when it comes to the people in his castle and just paying attention to her. He doesn't. And before she's taken, there's a lot happening to Bee that he's not even a little bit aware of.
Right.
And you don't have to like disrespect your daughter's boundaries to know what's happening in their life or in their lives and what's happening in their day to day. And that's, I think, the part where I really was frustrated with him as a parent, that he had people in his life always watching over him. And so maybe that's his reaction, is to give more space. But as an adult, sometimes you have to look over children, even if they think it's invasive, especially when they're really little. So I don't know. But I do think as a whole, everybody's a little bit harsh on Fitz, including me.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Jess. And thank you, everybody who wrote in. It's always really nice to hear from you. And we love when you guys discuss each other's opinions and our opinions, and love hearing all of your theories, tinfoil hat or not. So thanks for writing in, and we look forward to hearing from you next week.